Welcome, everybody, to another week of Wealth Wisdom, where we're helping you build wealth and legacy.
Companies are like an organism trying to survive.
It's always a risk when you're investing in a company that's purely tied to someone's brand.
45% of Americans have gone into debt for a Disney trip. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Wealth Wisdom. I hope everyone's doing well today. Today we have some great topics, but first, my hosts, my amazing co-hosts here. We have Bill Ryan in the top corner, and we got Eric Benz below me, depending on how you look at the screen right now. Very excited to have everyone here today, and I'm jazzed up. I'm ready. This is a fun topic today. We're going to dive into the meat of it. We are announcing a new format to the show. Okay, so we're going to kick off every show from now on with a rapid fire segment like we've been doing. We'll get then into the meat of the main topic, and then the very end, for the finale of the last bit of the show, we will dive into one of our holdings. So we're going to kind of let you behind the scenes on how we think about things, talk about one holding within our portfolio every week, which is an exciting piece that we're excited to bring you all. Let us know in the comments. As always, we want to hear from you as to what's working, what's not, and what you want to hear. Let's dive into it right away. Bill, Eric, we got rapid fire news coming out this week. The U.S. economy fell by 0.2%, 2 basis points in Q1. It was largely due to tariffs, but actually, which is interesting. So government spending, Doge has been in the limelight rather, for the first quarter. Government spending was down by 5%. Was it due to tariffs? Was it government spending? A little bit of both, but I think it's overall great news, only down 0.2% considering all the uncertainty and the roller coaster of a ride. So that's pretty great news. I think it's a strong economy. Any quick thoughts there?
Is that GDP that's down?
That's right, yeah.
0.2%?
Yep. Just for Q1, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everything is like frozen right now, right? You know what I mean? Everybody's frozen, walking on eggshells, tariffs. It's all you hear. Right? All you hear.
And speaking of tariffs, Bill, that perfect segue into the next point, rapid fire here. We've got a U.S. Court of International Trade on this past Wednesday blocked a lot of the steep reciprocal tariffs that Trump has put in order, reporting that this.
Now, did it burst yesterday, though?
There's a lot. This is still such brand new news. There's a lot going on. The Trump team administration has said they are going to use every tool in their toolbox to fight it. So a lot of uncertainty comes out.
Naturally.
Right now, it doesn't get rid of all the tariffs. It actually strikes down what they call IEEPA, which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So all the tariffs that they use that act for, that emergency power, has been struck down. So that's largely tariffs, Mexico, Canada, and China.
So they determined that Trump's tariffs were not for an emergency? Is that what they determined? Is that why?
Exactly. And they said, it was like, hey, we've had these in place for the past 40 years, so why now? Why is it an emergency? That was their main sticking point. It's definitely going to go to the Supreme Court. It's too big of a thing, but right now there's a pause on a lot of tariffs. So but overall, $23.8 billion on China. Tariffs on China products will remain in place.
Yeah, I would love for them to have maybe they already do, but have almost like a Doge team on tariffs, like what stuff we would actually benefit more from, what stuff we wouldn't, rather than just doing these blanket things.
Yeah.
In general, right? Blanket items on anything, whether it's opinions, tariffs, or whatever it is, they're never a good thing, right? You know what I mean? You want to make sure everything's in context. Unfortunately, right now, I feel like we're doing a little too much blanketing of uncertain stuff, but
it's interesting. What's remained a lot in a lot of countries was that 10%. It's hard to get 10%
across the board,
and people are happy with it. That's the interesting point I find to be very, kind of to highlight. If you came out of the gate and said, "Hey, we're going to put 10% on, and we're going to leave them there," people would be pissed. But because they went like to 100, and then they went back down, we'll keep it 10%. People are now, okay, that's fine.
I mean, they needed to raise revenue, right? If we want to have these tax bills that are so cheap, they need to raise revenue somewhere, right? So what do? You effectively put a national sales tax, a tariff, you know what I mean? Otherwise on stuff. Yeah.
So steel, automobile, aluminum, and solar on China products will stay in effect right now.
Yeah, I think like with cars, right? They would just crush U.S. automakers
Yes,
if we didn't have a tariff, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
all the U.S. automakers would just get like a sledgehammer taken to them if China just all of a sudden released like a bunch of $15,000 cars. I mean, or something like that. It would just kill the market.
It would be brutal. And then other news, Elon Musk leaves Doge and returns back to Tesla and SpaceX full time. And on his way out, he has expressed extreme disappointment with Trump's new beautiful tax bill. The beautiful tax bill that goes to Congress this soon. I don't know what the timing on, but it's passed the House, it's going to Congress. The reason Musk is disappointed with it is it's going to inflate our federal deficit even further by 2.3 trillion over the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think he was really concerned about, say whatever you want about this Doge thing, whether you agree with some of the stuff, you don't or not. I mean, he definitely said in interviews that he was really concerned about this, our spiraling debt. And he was worried about, legitimately, I've heard him say that he was worried about us being able to pay out Social Security to people, to help people in need. And one of the things he wanted to do is make sure that we had the resources in place and, the limiting our debt so that those things could happen. And so I'm not surprised that he actually kind of, kind of ripped on this a little bit, because it's kind of undoing a lot of the work that he was trying to accomplish, right, these past couple months, where he basically set aside his own, net worth and
for 130 days,
his companies and things like that, right? He took out of his, most people wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't volunteer for the government for a week, you know what I mean? Let alone
I was just
130 days.
Imagine how passionate he felt about this topic, to say, this is important enough for me to take time off of running 3, huge companies. I mean, Tesla, SpaceX.
Yeah, I think I honestly think, and don't get me wrong, it's, from what I've seen, it's going to save me a lot on taxes, but I just don't think if we're having our deficit go up by this much, and again, these are based on, it could be even worse because of some of the projections, certain increases like in tax flows and things like that. They're strictly projections. So it's not even based on like the numbers. I mean, if you just said, hey, if everything stayed static, you know what I mean? It would be really bad. So I'm not, again, not totally in favor of it, just because I think it's just making a bad situation worse. And I think
I agree.
We're really going to attack this stuff more head on.
I
It
think
just
there's a
started
lot of
worrying me
people
more
in
and
your
more.
camp. A lot of people in your camp, Bill. Eric, what are your thoughts on this new tax bill going to Congress?
I don't know. Does it go through as it is, or does it get edited by the Democratic side?
Right now, if they vote it in, it'll be as is. So it's been passed by the House, and it's going to go to Congress for final approval. If it gets sent back, it'll be sent back for edits. And then
Yeah. And obviously, there's a looming long-term issue, but if this goes through, it means more money gets pumped into the system, and in the near term, probably the stock market goes up.
Right.
So if you want to take advantage of it now, now's the time to invest. I do want to talk about, I know, it's maybe not as relevant, but it's definitely great for Tesla and SpaceX to have Musk back out of the political spotlight. I wonder, going into the whole Doge thing, if he thought people would be more appreciative of what he was trying to accomplish, but instead he did damage to his brands, which is why you probably see a lot of CEOs avoid, being in the political spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how. I think it's good to do, right? Any cut in spending is a good thing. We can't keep the federal deficit continuing over, year after year. It's not responsible.
Hey, if you work for one of those companies that's got one of those contracts, though, you're not going to be.
Sure, you're pissed.
You're not going to be happy with spending cuts. Yeah.
No, I get it. Yeah, but I don't know. It's definitely an interesting topic. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't think he thought that it would do that much damage, though, or he just didn't care.
No, he definitely cares. Think about him as personally, everything he's ever done, people have kind of heralded up until the last couple of years.
It's true.
He was, started Tesla, that's great for the environment. It was a revolutionary product. Bought a solar company and incorporated with it. SpaceX, huge hit. Basically took the place of, what NASA should have been doing. People loved him for that. But then he like goes into politics and realizes no matter what he does, half the country's going to hate him. Probably like big miscalculation on his part. Yeah.
And the other half loves him, so who knows? Also, people's attention spans are like, the size of a goldfish. So,
here's my question for you. Maybe it doesn't damage SpaceX as much, but do you think there's a long-term effect on Tesla? I guess like okay, maybe you argue people will forget about this and it doesn't damage the brand. If people don't forget about the political side of this, is buying a car an emotional decision, and will this affect them longer? I do think it might actually have
no.
You think no effect?
No effect. The Tesla stock is already up 8% on this news, so it's on the up and up. It's coming back.
The investors have spoken.
Yeah, the markets I think are going to play referee on this one, like they always do, and they're already saying, "Hey, this is a good thing for Tesla."
Yeah, it has recovered significantly from where it was. I mean, it did for a long time. It took a major, major hit in reduction in value, but it's
still down from its peak.
Yeah, but I mean, has it lost market share in Europe? You're already seeing some of the Chinese EV companies really gain a lot of market share over Tesla, right? I mean, if you look at their sales and stuff like that, I mean, tanking would be I think an accurate description of what they saw. I don't know if how bad they were in China, you know what I mean? But just by losing that market share and seeing some of those other car companies really do well, hopefully, you know what I mean? And then I should say, hopefully, is it recoverable? You know what I mean? I'm not really rooting for it either way, but yeah.
I think, well, because Tesla's never been a stock really about the actual performance. It's always been like, a long-term, almost hype play, like where does it
moonshot stock?
Yeah, and you have autonomous, robots coming out of there, and I think that's a multi-trillion-dollar market that they're going to tap into, and I think a lot of investors look at it.
But if you look back at his
low, they're already 60% up, 60% from their bottom this year. I mean, it is coming back.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. I mean, it might have taken longer than maybe he's anticipated, but most of his manifestations have come true. If you look back at what he was talking about, I mean, I know he's been talking about robo-taxis for
that's another massive.
God knows how long. It's been a year away for, I don't know, 12 years now, but that's coming to fruition. Finally.
This is true.
A decade in the making. You know what I mean? A decade, one year away for a decade.
Everything takes longer than you expect, especially when you are innovating like he is, and everyone's called him crazy. He's still going, right?
Yeah, they're even now, right? They're releasing them in Austin. They're starting, you know what I mean? They're starting to come on. I know Waymo's been in the lead in that area, but they are. I'm more interested to see are they going to have their own network in terms of.
Yes.
Are they going to be partnering with Uber? Are they going to try to create their own? Uber's already partnered with Waymo. That's where I'm interested.
Yeah.
Who's going to be doing that aspect of the business, not necessarily the robo-taxi business itself. I think there's going to be a lot of competitors in that field. I'm just wondering if Uber is going to be able to broker, you know what I mean? Everything with all of them. That's where my interest lies.
Yeah, I know we're big on Uber. The last piece, just moving this along. I know we got to keep this tight here. The Nvidia earnings report, the most valuable company in the world today, came out this week. So we're going to dive deep into that later on. Quick note, it is up 4.9% as of earnings, and we'll dive deeper into that later. But let's dive into the main topic. Eric, you suggested this last week. I'd love to hear, let you kick it off, but private versus public school, and what is a parent to do? I know it's a hot topic among clients, at Fox Hill Wealth Management.
It come up all the time,
Exactly.
all the time. And it's, you want the best for your kids. You want them to have the, best advantages in life so they can be successful. So we see clients grappling with it all the time. Costs of school, the inflation rate for education is about 8% a year. So it gets more expensive each year. So it's crazy.
To think about, right? But 8% rate is just,
especially with colleges, American universities are, the gold standard. So there's a, influx of rich foreigners. pushing up the cost of education. But okay, private schools cost very widely. On average for a private high school, 16 grand a year. The least expensive state, South Dakota, at 6 grand a year. Most expensive for private high school is Connecticut, 42,000 a year. Where our headquarters is located in Massachusetts.
That's interesting
go ahead,
because,
Justin.
sorry, to just clarify that point, is that it doesn't include boarding schools. So boarding schools at a
Oh yeah, you'd
massive jump
imagine
to that. And we'll get
like
into
a
that
choate
in a second.
or yeah. Oh my god.
What? Because
Those ones are
the room and board is not included in that.
And these are averages among each state. Yeah, these are average points.
Oh yeah. So some of those boarding schools are probably 70 grand a year plus.
There you go. Yeah, that's what
easy.
You're right on the nose.
Yeah. Massachusetts average 38,000. Rhode Island average is about 30,000. Anecdotally, the one near me in Providence is 50 grand a year. There's another all boys Catholic school. I think that's more like 25 grand. It adds up.
So it's serious money.
And what does the data tell us? It's like when you factor in all the advantages, okay, maybe there's a little bit more one-on-one time, more resources at a private school.
Definitely smaller class ratios, right? Like teachers.
Yeah. A lot of them it's 10-1. So okay, maybe there's an advantage there, networking advantage. But when they parse through all the data of all these different advantages, they find that when they control for like income of a family, that test scores are pretty similar private to public school. Rich kids at public schools and rich kids at private schools tend to get better resources at home and then test better. But once you control for income, it's pretty equal. The one advantage that, depending on what private school you go to, is a network advantage. That's the one big advantage. I don't know. It takes like a certain type of kid to even take advantage of that. And then the other one I read about was some of the better elite private schools have a better guidance system for getting into colleges. So they might have more colleges visiting, better guidance counselors to train you on the essays, relationships with the colleges, all that kind of stuff. But you need to decide if 200 grand for 4 years of high school is enough of an advantage there.
Maybe at the very least in some of these states, the most expensive school, I thought this was crazy, in Manhattan. This is, I think, according to Spears magazine, so SpearsUMS.com, $98,000 a year boarding, with boarding at Lehman Manhattan Prep. And what's particularly interesting, they welcome kids starting at 12 months of age. So 12 months, that's 18 years.
We're breeding the future leaders of tomorrow. So early enough.
What's that one?
Well, maybe it's so competitive you got to put them in the daycare to even get into the school,
get in the
later,
door,
right?
Yeah. So I'm only 1.8 million.
Man,
that's a big range. If you're going to go all 18 years, 1.8.
True elite.
The 400 grand. But anyway.
Wait, and that's not even adjusting for inflation and all that stuff. So it's probably more. Once you factor in value of money, what you could have been spending that on, it's probably like $4 million.
Love to know what the daycare number is. Like 70K.
I mean, probably. Wow.
Okay, so
astronomical numbers.
Yeah, so the big reasons people our clients specifically want or find this to be attractive or something to consider, a lot of safety, personalized education, smaller class sizes. Some of them, I think, like religious affiliation. So if it's a private
I forgot to mention that. That was a factor too.
Yeah. But what I think this is, it's really, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, I can't afford this. I'm screwed. I think gives you a lot of hope. Like you have a lot of control as a parent. If you have more time on your hands and you're willing to provide your kid just help, one-on-one help at home, if you're involved as a parent, I think you can do a lot there, because that was in the data, right? Like at home, what's happening in the home.
That's the biggest deciding factor for
important.
Like test score success. Yeah,
it's more important. And then also, like, a lot of families can reinvest that money if they opt to go to public school and save the, that, what, depending on the state you're in, right? It'd be $6,000 all the way up to 70 a year, or 98 if you're going to Manhattan.
Right.
It's, you can reinvest that in extracurriculars. Thought that was really interesting, Bill.
Yeah, and another thing too that I almost think that you'd be better off almost getting like a tutor. You know what I mean? That would give your
Exactly.
kids some more one-on-one time, and for a fraction of the cost of a private school.
Tutor.
So there's, you know what I mean? You could get them in a couple different subjects.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking for, less than $6,000 for the year, you know what I mean? Or something like that, which is nothing compared to these numbers that we're looking at. And I think that would really help your kid, because you get that, again, it's more, that one-on-one time, or that lower ratio. That to me, I think would be the biggest. Because and again, this is not for all kids, but this is for some kids do get lost in a crowd, right?
Oh, for sure.
And they need a little bit more attention. They might be a little bit more hesitant to ask a question in a bigger group, than in a smaller group, because a smaller group, it's more intimate, right? You're not as, again, the whole thing with, people don't want to, speak in front of a large audience. Smaller classroom, more likely to ask a question. If they get that question, then they get an understanding of it. It's going to help them with the rest of that lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
I think those things are really important. I think that's why maybe private schools have a little bit, more benefit in that sense. Because I just
totally
think
agree.
public schools, right? You're subject to budgets. You're subject to all those things. If they need to fit, they want to have 18 kids in the class, but you know what? It just calls for they have to have 21, 22, right? Something like that. There's not a lot of leeway there.
And I think, a lot of this, it's very interesting. Similar reasons you just mentioned, Bill, are reasons homeschooling is also growing outside of, outside it's like a fringe. It's gaining popularity. It's actually growing by 2 to 8% per year over the past several years. So, parents saying, hey, I can't do, my public school's failing me. Private school's not an option. Homeschool is now becoming a third option, more popular. So that, for those who can do it and who can work together to make it work. So that's another
I assume
interesting piece to this.
you need one spouse that's probably stay at home, right?
A lot of it's like community driven.
Of course.
So like different parents will take a day and they'll rotate all that small group between them, or one.
Okay, if you do it, okay, yeah.
So it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's, so if you are going to private, what do you guys? I mean, so what do you guys talk to clients about, like, as they're going through this? Or what are the pros and cons, just financially speaking? What could someone use the money for, Eric?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know, your retirement fund. Yeah. You can take that 200,000 to send your kid to public high school and be actually set for retirement in 10 years. Yeah. Yeah. It depends, right? If a client's on the edge, maybe in their financial plan, they can kind of just barely afford it. You're going to try to give them alternatives. Ultimately, it's their decision.
Yeah.
And they want what's best for their child. But maybe you'd suggest going to a town with a really nice public school system. To be honest, some of those basically like private schools. I'll give you an example. The town, anecdotally, I'd like to move to in Rhode Island, their public high school, class sizes of, student to teacher ratio 14-1. They have an esports team, gymnastics, like random sports. I was like, my high school didn't offer any of that stuff. I was like, this is a public school, but it's acting like a private school. So if you can afford that nice town,
you are one of those elite private school kids. Is that
yeah,
true?
when you go, I was a private school brat. Still am.
Anecdotally, what are your thoughts on private school? Just sample size of one here.
Well, yeah, I will say at the high school I went to, I was definitely like a small fish. I was probably bottom 50 or mid or bottom 50% academically. I will say when I got to college, I found it to be a breeze.
Surprising from such a scholar like yourself, I will say. But
you're the data.
I learned how to read and stuff. That was good. Yeah. So, I mean, there was an advantage in that regard. I think I probably did have better preparation, but you'd ask my dad, and I have a lot of siblings, and he's, wish I hadn't done the private school thing.
Oh, really?
Well,
He lived in a very nice town with a really good public school.
So
and it
out
cost him
of
millions of dollars.
yeah,
Go ahead.
out of 7 kids, right? How many went to private school?
We all went to private high school and
Right.
private college. So you're talking about millions of dollars in education. Yeah, my dad would argue, especially the private high school, maybe would have done it differently. So some of us got like academic stuff for college, but still doesn't matter. It's really expensive. And you see other people go to public colleges and they have amazing networks. Just as many opportunities when it comes to work after school, especially if you go to a public college and you want to stay in that area after school. There's just going to be tons of opportunities. Private school is the same. I'll give you an example. Obviously, Brown is a prestigious like Ivy League school. My wife works there, and she sent me Brown. I know I've gone on this tangent before. She sent me Brown's career day, list of there's all these Fortune 500 companies, all the Magnificent Seven, companies, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple. They're all there. At Providence College's career day, it was just a bunch of local companies, a lot of like insurance, a lot of consulting, healthcare, those kinds of companies.
Wow.
None of the Magnificent Seven, none of those companies.
It surprises me about Providence College.
network
It's still
isn't there.
a private school that's
Pretty well renowned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's more regional.
I think maybe, yeah, but again, like all that stuff, that might be on the initial, right? But a few years out, I don't think it matters as much.
No.
But yeah, that initial job, foot in the door, always helps with being part of the, the IVs and the small IVs. That's just where they go to recruit, right? Because it's just the percentages are better. They just are. You know what I mean? That person was a little more focused in high school. Took school more seriously to get into that higher school, and that projection of where they're going to be is probably a little more narrow, right? You're probably getting someone who's going to be a little bit more successful, or at least their potential, right?
Here's the stat for you. Yeah, no consistent evidence that private school alone leads to lifetime earnings once you control for family background. A 2018 study from Urban Institute found that private high school attendance alone did not significantly affect college enrollment or later earnings after adjusting for student background. Yeah, there's no leg up as far as earnings go. Private school versus public school, lifetime earnings, same. Unless you happen to be a rich kid with tons of connections. That's really it.
All right, so nothing replaces hard work is basically what we're saying. So make sure your kid's a hard worker, and they'll probably do fine no matter what you do, right? Whether you send them to private school, public school, if they have a good work ethic, and that's what you've instilled with them from a young age, I think that's the most important lesson you can do, bar none.
Yeah.
I think we moderator Justin Obi here to to a freeze up here. We got a nice still shot of him.
I'm frozen. I can hear you though. I'm still.
Oh, okay.
I still
Okay.
hear you. I am.
And it records locally, right?
Happening.
So you.
Yeah, but there's I think I'm in a hurricane. I can kind of hear you guys. I know that we're on to the next. Moving on.
You sure it's not a Fortnite hurricane using the data?
No, because the kids are at school. I don't know what's going on outside.
Oh, yeah.
It is definitely crazy.
Yeah.
No, so I agree. Hard work pays off for sure, and parent involvement in the family. Let's get into that. So Nvidia, full disclosure, one of our holdings and one of our portfolios. Nvidia obviously had an earnings report this week. Its sales jumped on basically, great. It's already up 5% since Wednesday. And the big thing is they beat earnings, revenue as data this quarter up 73%, which is great. Let's dive into when did we buy the stock? What were we thinking, Eric? Why did we do it at the time? Just a little background for everyone listening.
Yeah, I didn't pull the exact date. I feel like it was like 6 weeks ago to 2 months ago, kind of
early April.
After a lot of tech companies had taken a big haircut. Nvidia was no exception to that, probably down 30% from its top. So it looked attractive to us. We thought some of the political and economic risk was a little bit overblown. But you're talking about a company with a strong moat, consistent earnings. 40% of its revenue comes from Magnificent Seven companies: Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon. And those companies are showing really strong earnings. And yeah, they're not about to change their spend. They're going to continue investing in data centers. And look, I know there's tons of uncertainty with China. What are they allowed to sell there? You're talking about the H20 chips that are restricted now, which for those that don't know, Nvidia had to make like lesser chips with lesser computing power to send to China. And that was government regulation. Now they're not even allowed to sell those to China. Okay, maybe there's a ton of, lost future revenue there. But there's deals being made elsewhere. Yeah, I know. I can't remember the details, but there's that stuff with Saudi Arabia now. So there's future opportunities for Nvidia, and it's a growing sector. Great spot to be. Now largest company in the world, and it's done well for us. So that's good.
It's incredible, Bill, to see how the revenue for the quarter versus expected, they still beat it despite the government regulations going on in China. And what's interesting to highlight, there's a gross margin. It would have been 71% if that wasn't blocked.
Wow.
Yeah. What was it? It was like around 60, a little over 60 due to that aspect.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, analysts, people, again, much smarter than us, right, who look at the whole tech sector and, everything like that and studied very closely, felt that they had revised their earning estimates upwards. They feel like there's still a lot of room to run with Nvidia, and not only it's into chips, but it's also getting into other parts of the hardware of the AI build out and data centers and things like that. They're actually kind of stealing some market share from a few other major players in the game, and things are looking. The future is bright for Nvidia, which you could have said that 10 years ago and you'd be sitting pretty right now, but it still continues to do well. And I feel like this earnings call, the last several times Nvidia has had an earnings call, the whole market is almost at the edge of the seat waiting. What is going to happen? Are they going to have a bad one? And if they do, what's going to be the
whole AI supply chain's tied to it?
If you looked at their earnings calls too, I mean, they blow things out of the water, and it doesn't even. There was a while where every time it did, the stock would go crazy. Now they've done so well that they can blow things out of the water and it barely moves a speck. That's how much anticipation there is with this company, which I just find interesting. But yeah, no, I mean, things have continued to do well for them. The growth has continued. I do think some of this stuff with China, as Jensen had mentioned, really feels like whoever gets control of the chip market in China is really going to be a worldwide leader. So I understand the government stance on kind of limiting some of the processing, but he's also mentioned that, listen, they're going to come up with it on their own, right? So whether we do it or somebody else does, it's going to happen, right? Because as soon as you feel in competition, right? If competition, is there, they're going to come out with it. We saw that stuff with DeepSeek and things like that, right? Earlier this year, that they were able to do more with lesser chips. And obviously it was a huge kind of moment where everything kind of took a backseat, what's happening, right? But that innovation is going to be there. And like I said, if we somehow can work these things out with China so that they can be or continue to be, right, that worldwide leader, that'll continue to drive growth for them. I do think that stuff will get worked out, right, over time. And hopefully we're looking back, this is kind of a blip in history. I think typically that is the case when you look at a lot of stuff in technology, right? People want to limit things right away. Oh no, we need that. We can't share that. We did, and things like that. But I do think it's going to get worked out. I think Nvidia is going to continue to grow. They're going to be a leader in that area. Excuse me.
Do you think some of the restrictions get, lessened over time, and you think maybe it's just a trade war tool right now? They're just kind of caught in the backfire.
100%.
Justin, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Justin, what do you think?
No, I agree. I think once that gets cleared up, it's off to the races again. I'm particularly impressed with their performance, considering the anchor they're dragging, the political anchor. One risk that I found interesting as a note that I figured I'd bring up with the stock is, and we're aware of it as well, but Nvidia's got their start in gaming, and so they still have a large exposure, 53% exposure to the gaming sector, which I don't think will slow down. I don't actually view it as a risk personally, but that's just my personal
It
opinion.
which grew this past quarter.
It's grown, and they're still, I didn't know this, they're still supplying the chips for like the Nintendo Switch 2 that just came out, right? Like Nintendo Switch blew. I don't even know if you can get it, but I mean everybody wanted it. So I don't think gaming is going anywhere. I think it's steady, but I think if we see a dip in the gaming sector, it's cause for concern considering their large exposure to it.
No, and the processing needed for all these games is unbelievable. Like,
It's getting
you
bigger
think
and
back
bigger.
to how video games looked like 15 years ago, it's insane, the graphics now. And you assume they'll continue to improve and they'll need even more processing. So they'll be
Yeah. So
Yeah.
overall, I think it's good. That's a little sneak peek into how we look at things. We'll go into another stock next week.
All that automation. I'm just thinking like all the robots, automation, cars. Think about all that
What about
stuff that
metaverse? What if
needs.
metaverse takes off?
That's the one thing I don't think will. Actually, I don't know. It depends on what your vision of
latest AI video is now.
Oh, it's freaky.
It's crazy. This week dropped another AI release, and the video, it's like VO3. I mean, you're seeing ads that look completely
It's like
real.
Star Trek, right?
It's getting crazy.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it works. I don't know. It's above my pay grade.
Right.
Like,
This
does
is
your
an
house
AI.
have to be AI automated? You know what I mean? Like where you walk into a room and it almost looks like people are physically there, but how does a build out of that work? That's why I think that stuff is so far out. Because I don't think the goggles and things like that or glasses are.
It's getting crazy.
It's
just
a little-
go watch
yeah.
The Matrix and come back and talk to me.
Matrix, Minority Report. That's a good one to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both.
I feel bad for all the celebrities who they now do they change what they're saying, like the AI. Have you seen all that stuff? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, you can go in and say once they get enough of your voice, they can just go in and say, hey, do this report in Eric Benz's voice,
sued.
Justin Obi's voice, and things like that.
Yeah.
There's still IP is gonna control, and governments need to come out and regulate this stuff for sure.
Which there will be.
I think more than ever before, and I say this kind of with putting my marketing hat on. The brand is becoming more and more important. I think I was just watching MI6 last week or something, like over the weekend, and with the kids, and Tom Cruise.
Oh, do you like it?
I didn't watch the new one. I was watching like the latest.
Okay,
release.
sorry. Yeah.
Tom Cruise maybe he won't have to act anymore. It'll just be his likeness, but he's definitely going to get paid because he's got a brand, right? The Tom Cruise
For a
brand.
while.
Yeah,
For a while.
Yeah, but part of the appeal of the movies is that there's like a 60-year-old dude like doing all the stunts, right? Isn't that gonna?
Oh yeah,
Like,
he's
you wanna-
definitely doing
Do you want
stunts.
to pay to see CGI?
But here's the
Tom
thing,
There's
Cruise?
a lot of CGI in those too.
What if the next star though is not a real person? They've just, you know what I mean? Someone is just created. That's the thing.
You're already seeing that. You already have AI influencers, and people are following them as if they're real people. They don't even know, or sometimes they do know and they still don't care. They're just loving it.
Yeah, my interest is more in all the robo stuff, the robotics, the automation, things like that. More in all, I guess, more stuff that I use in my everyday life, and how that stuff will now allow me to do more work in less time.
Yeah.
Right. So whether it's my lawn getting mowed, you know what I mean? Like all these like little things, I just think of all that stuff getting done for me while I'm doing other stuff.
I'm just waiting for the robo nanny.
The robo nanny.
Yeah.
Was it Rosie from the Jetsons? The robo maid?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
No, but it's like that type of little household things, you know what I mean? Which is kind of here, but I think getting enhanced, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of, we're going to buy a Roomba for the office, but that's
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Keep that dust in. Now the HVAC's getting turned on. Now it's getting a little warmer.
All right. That concludes the show, guys. Thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next Friday. Until then,
All right, later, guys.
All right. Be good. Have a great weekend.
be good.